This episode is brought to you by The Right Professor, where we are composing ourselves and composing our world. Hi, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of The Lit Minute with me, Professor Stephanie Johnson, also known as The Right, WRITE Professor. The title of this episode is The Lit ReCap, as it summarizes both historical and current literary events that took place in the months of August and September. Let's start with August. In August, the literary world celebrated James Baldwin's birthday, who was born on August 2nd, 1924. Another historical marker in the month of August is August 18th, 1859. On that date, Harriet Wilson's Our Nig became the first novel published by a black writer. Isn't that awesome? August 28th, 1963. Do you know what that date marks? I'm sure you do. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And possibly a little known fact about that speech is that it was delivered extemporaneously. He made it up as he spoke. That is anointing. And now for August 2019. A major current event happened on August 5th. It shook the literary world. On August 5th, 2019, we mourned the loss of my favorite author, as well as the favorite author of many contemporary black writers, Toni Morrison. I had the honor of communicating with Dr. Morrison several times during my graduate study, and it of course changed my whole perspective about black writing. Purpose and audience came into play because in studying her work, I understood that she was not writing to the general public. She was writing to black people. I wrote my master's thesis about her novel, Song of Solomon. In researching that novel, I came across the concept of Sankofa. I immediately recognized that concept as something that I've heard stated differently in the African American community, but I came to understand it from a more African perspective, having read Song of Solomon. Not to give away the plot of Song of Solomon, but that narrative is full of messaging to go back and get that which was stolen and lost. Not just individual families, but for black culture and identity as a whole. Studying that work taught me, the story was didactic. It taught me the importance of remembrance and the importance of reclaiming origin and identity, the importance of deconstructing stories even within families to get a greater understanding of who our ancestors are and what they were about and the greatness that they achieved. That is the single most lesson I learned from my encounters with Dr. Morrison and her work. For that, I not only consider her somewhat of a mentor, but a literary guide, an ancestor, and even an African griot. She is ranked among some of the greatest of African storytellers that walked the earth. Toni Morrison. And now for September. Okay, so here's some literary history for September. September 3rd, 1979, marks the time when Robert Maynard, editor, publisher of the Oakland Tribune in Oakland, California, became the first African American to head a daily newspaper. That was as recent as 1979. That was not that long ago, y'all. That was 40 years ago. That is no time in history, okay? On September 13th, we celebrated the birthday of the first African American Rhodes Scholar, Alain Locke, who was born on September 13th, 1886. Alain Locke is also noted for his 1925 anthology, The New Negro Movement, which became the original name of what we know today as the Harlem Renaissance. On September 18th, 1895, Booker T. Washington delivered his famous Atlanta Exposition speech. And lastly, on September 27th, 1912, W.C. Handy publishes Memphis Blues. This has been Season 3, Episode 7 of The Lit Minute, entitled The Lit Recap, with me, Professor Stephanie Johnson, also known as The Writes, W-R-I-T-E Professor. And always remember, reading and writing are lit, so be lit.